Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome. I'm Heather McConnell. I'm the Associate Director for Guideline Implementation and Knowledge Transfer with the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome you all today to our 2016 Nursing Career and Professional Development Showcase. We have a full day available for you, and I do know that you'll have a great opportunity to network and meet people today, opportunities to visit our vendors, possibly have your resume reviewed, and participate in some of our presentations and conversations that we're going to be having today. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to a group of colleagues who are going to be having a discussion on my nursing journey, and I'll introduce you to them now. Sheryl Bernard, Sheryl's right here, is a registered nurse with a certified health leader with experience that spans across the domains of clinical care, administration, governance, and education. She is currently a director at Ontario Shores, corporate lead for the Ontario Human Rights Commission Partnership, and is an active member of design teams contributing to transformational change through various LIN projects. She is an adjunct professor at the University of Toronto and University of Ontario Institute of Technology. She's also the founding president for the Jamaican Canadian Association of Nurses and has served on several community boards, including the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario, as a member at large nursing practice. She's a strong advocate for continuous professional development and mentorship. So help me welcome Sheryl. Beside Sheryl is Gurjit Sangha. Gurjit completed her Bachelor of Science in Health Studies at the University of Waterloo, and then her Bachelor of Science in Nursing and Masters of Nursing in the clinical stream at the University of Toronto. Gurjit's nursing career began at the Hospital for Sick Children here in Toronto, where she continues to work today. Her clinical work has been in the Pediatric Oncology program as a staff nurse and clinical support nurse on the inpatient unit and as an interlinked community cancer nurse. She held the role of project manager within the Centre for Nursing, leading the implementation of RNAO best practice guidelines across the organization. Currently, Gurjit is a clinical nurse specialist within the Pediatric Advanced Care team. Welcome, Gurjit. Beside Gurjit is Tim Lenartowych. Tim is a registered nurse who's currently the Director of Nursing and Health Policy Department at the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario, a colleague of mine. Prior to working at RNAO, Tim had a long-term involvement with RNAO, including chairing an interest group, sitting on local executives, participating on committees, and receiving the Students of Distinction Award. He has a baccalaureate degree in nursing with distinction from the University of Western Ontario and a Master of Laws degree with a specialization in health law from Osgoode Hall Law School, York University. Tim has a keen interest in health policy issues, having previously been a senior policy analyst with Ontario's Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care, where he received an ACE Award for his work supporting full-time nursing employment. He's also an adjunct lecturer at the University of Western Ontario's School of Nursing. Welcome, Tim. And finally, Nathalie DiLabio is a graduate from the Laurentian St. Lawrence College Collaborative Program at the Cornwall campus. She's been heavily involved in the RNAO since her second year of university, culminating in being president of the Nursing Students of Ontario in her last year of school, and has been involved in many interest groups. Nathalie's final consolidation at the Cornwall Community Hospital on the surgical unit, and she has a new grad position at the Ottawa Hospital General Campus on a mixed surgical unit. She continues to be involved with the RNAO as she adjusts to her new role as a newly graduated novice nurse. Welcome, Nathalie. Okay, so I'm going to turn things over to our colleagues, and they're going to have a conversation that we're going to listen into. Thank you.
Wonderful. Can everyone hear me? Those of you at the back, wave your hand if you can hear. Okay, wonderful. So thank you very much for inviting us out to be here. I'm personally honored to share the stage with such astute nursing colleagues and a nursing student, probably extraordinaire, I'm sure. So I'm looking forward to sort of sharing our stories with all of you. I have a question for you. I'm sure it's probably not going to be easy to sort of narrow down to one memorable moment, but what has been your most memorable experience in your nursing career, Tim?
Okay, well, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Sheryl, for that introduction, and I feel the same. I'm very excited to have this discussion. What a difficult question, and I was thinking about it before coming here and trying to pinpoint one particular experience I think is nearly impossible, but some moments that stand out to me are, of course, first finishing my BScN, and the sense of pride and accomplishment that I felt during that moment was quite extraordinary. Getting an opportunity to be able to work at RNAO for the past 5 years, or about 5 years, has certainly been, I think, one of the highlights of my career thus far, and the accomplishments that we've been able to make from a policy perspective, getting to meet so many wonderful nurses, nurse leaders, nursing students, and then having a chance to complete a master's degree, and doing that while working full time, and involves, as I'm sure anyone can relate to who has gone back to school as they're working full time, there was a lot of sacrifice involved, and I really appreciate the patience of my family and friends, and so to actually have that under my belt and complete it, I really felt proud of that. So I think those are kind of some, not all of them, but some moments that stand out to me.
Well, that's excellent. I mean, kudos to you, because anyone who knows RNAO knows that the bar is very high, actually, to get in there. So you must be pretty good, Tim. Nathalie, do you want to share with us?
Yes, thank you. And I would like to thank you, everyone, for coming today and for the opportunity. And to share the stage with you guys is very extraordinary. I feel so new to all of this, to nursing in general, and then to be asked to do this is overwhelming, but quite the honor. So thank you again, Deloria, and thank you for everyone. Like Tim said, it's very hard to pin down, even as a new graduate and a novice nurse. It's a very hard question, because I think every day I was in placement and in my new job, there's one moment with one patient or one family member that can be memorable. But like Tim said, finishing my BScN degree, like most of the new nurses, or even not the new nurses, you can imagine that's a huge accomplishment after 4 years. You're like, whew. Getting my first job, being part of the RNAO, my first AGM here, like the people who walked into the Toronto Hilton the first time, you're like, wow, look at all these leaders. Listening to everyone talk, it really inspires you to go to the next level in nursing. It's not just about your books and the dreaded NCLEX, but it's about making a difference. So that really was one of my most memorable experiences. And working and being part as a team. The first time that a nurse, when I was on the floor in my placement, said, oh, I really hope you come back here and work with us because you're really part of the team. I don't feel that you're just a student, but you're really part of my team. I think that was one of my most memorable moments, because I felt that I was contributing to nursing as a whole, not just for myself and my patients, but for the whole profession. So I think that was really one of my memorable moments.
That's great. Any nursing students in the room? So if you're looking for a mentor, her table will be somewhere over there, so you can network with Nathalie after. That's amazing. Gurjit, please do share.
Thank you. And again, I'll echo what everybody else has said. Kind of being a part of this panel is pretty amazing. And I think when we first talked about the idea of the panel, I appreciated that I was the nurse that was kind of the mid-career nurse. And I was like, how did that happen? Like, I don't really understand how quickly 15 years went by. Like, it's pretty amazing. And I think the neat thing about all of us here is that we are all so passionate about what we're doing, regardless of how long we've been in the profession. And I think that says a lot about how great nursing is and how great it can be for you, kind of, if it's really what you are in. And I think when I think about memorable moments over my career of 15 years, I think about moments that really kind of helped me make the decisions to be where I am at now. And so I'm going to talk about a couple of different moments, actually. And one was when I was a nursing student and I had a placement at Sick Kids. And I was trying to find where they were having nursing grand rounds that day. And so it had said the first floor, and I was a student. So really I knew the one tower of the building, and I was there looking on the first floor for the boardroom, for the auditorium. And so I couldn't find it. So I stepped into an office and I was asking the administrative staff there if they could direct me to where the auditorium was. And they said, oh, you're looking for an auditorium. So that's on the other side of the building. And I said, oh, okay, so how do I get there? This was kind of hard to explain. And there was another gentleman that happened to be there at the same time. And this was in like the hospital foundation offices is where I was at. And what he said was that, oh, you know what, I'm going to walk you over there. And I said, okay, that would be really helpful. That's great. So we start walking over, and he's asking me about kind of where I'm placed as a student, and we're talking about that. And as we get closer to the auditorium, I said, oh, so do you work in the foundation? And he said, no, I'm actually the CEO of the hospital. And I thought, oh. And then I said, well, thank you so much for walking me. And so here I am, a nursing student at the entrance to the auditorium. And the way it is set up is that everybody in the auditorium on the one side can see the front door. So as I'm approaching the door, they can see I'm coming in with the CEO of the hospital. And I thought to myself, like, how amazing is that to work in a place where the CEO would take the time to walk a nursing student across the building to get to where she needed to go. And so for me, it was kind of a pivotal in a couple of things, thinking about what type of leadership I was looking for and what really mattered to me going into my career as a nurse, and also kind of spoke to the philosophy at the organization. And so I'm so proud to say that I've been at Sick Kids since then. So that kind of for me was one pivotal moment. And I think one other
Gurjit, as you're saying that story, I'm thinking to myself, that's probably also a memorable story for that CEO.
I wonder. I don't know. Like, I don't think I ever had a conversation with him after that, but I just remember thinking, like, I can't believe this just happened. Like, it was pretty embarrassing because you kind of think maybe I should know who he is, but I did not. But I think it also really helped me to kind of recognize that being a nurse is more than just kind of you as an individual at the bedside. It's a part of knowing your organization. It's a part of knowing your profession. And having had the opportunity to be a part of RNAO from early on, I think really helped with that. So as Heather had indicated, my career has been in pediatric oncology and now in palliative care. And so I think clinical work is really what is still drives me, and I'm so passionate about it. And so kind of the shift from being in oncology to palliative care was one through having experiences in which children I cared for had died and wanting to do better in that area of my practice. And as an advanced practice role on our palliative care team, we work with children who are in hospital and at home for end-of-life care. And for one of our patients who was in hospital for end-of-life care, one of the things that she really wished she could do was see the horse that she used to ride one last time. And it wasn't going to be possible based on her medical condition to actually be able to get out to the barn where the horse was. And so we started having conversations with the staff at the barn about how can we facilitate a visit? And so we were trying to see, was there a way to bring the horse to her, and how would we facilitate that at the hospital? So we kind of worked around talking to staff in our shipping and receiving department, because that was the one place where there was a space big enough to bring a horse, and we kind of coordinated it all, and we had things set up, and it was going to be a surprise for her. And I wasn't sure about kind of organizationally if I needed to, who I might need to run things by, so I was trying to run under the radar a bit. And then Mom said to me she'd gotten a call from CTV News that the story was going to be on the news, and I said, okay, so now I need to do a little bit more calling around, because I'm going to get myself in a lot of trouble if the TV station shows up here and I haven't actually gone through and checked with everybody that this is okay. And nonetheless, it all worked out really wonderfully, and we were able to facilitate a visit for this young girl with her horse, and she had some of her closest friends come in and be a part of that visit, and the staff at the barn brought in other little mini ponies for them to visit as well. And it was really kind of one of those moments that has always stood out for me, as being able to really do something that was so meaningful for this young girl and for her family, and something that certainly I treasure and still talk about, and I think even for her mom now as a memory and thing that she really remembers as kind of part of her last days, and how we could make it meaningful.
Excellent. That is actually a good place for me to build upon my story, because it's somewhat similar. So my nursing career spans over 20 years. And by the way, Heather, I'm still looking and waiting for the late career nurse to arrive. I'm just saying. All right. So for me, I struggle to sort of pinpoint, because I feel as though I have so many memorable stories. And the interesting thing about all of my memorable moments, that they're all kind of bittersweet. And the other theme that I recognized as I was thinking through and sort of shortlisting was that they all somehow are related to death. They have sort of a component of death in there. But what I want to share with you is we had a patient. I was a manager on a medical unit, and a fairly new manager actually at the time. And we had a patient who came on the unit who was palliative. So she was diagnosed with a very aggressive cancer, and she really didn't have much time to, prepare herself for what she didn't realize was going to be a very short journey for her after the diagnosis. So she was admitted onto the unit, and then I kept seeing this wonderful man that was there 24 hours a day. And he had explained to me that they were preparing for their wedding. So they were engaged for many, 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 many years. They lived together for a long, long time. And they were just at that place where, we already have it all, so why get married? Then finally they decided, why not? Let's get married. Immediately after that, she received a diagnosis of cancer. So myself and the staff, she was, in her palliative state, actually. She was not on our unit for very long, but the staff got to know her and her fiance very well. I remember standing at her bedside and asking her, not necessarily what her last wish is, but for the sake of conversation, try to understand what was important to her. And she said it was important to her to say her vows. She didn't even say want to get married. She goes, I just want to say my vows to my fiance. I said, well, would you like to do more than that? Would you like to get married? All of the staff were on board for this. So what we did was we brought her bed out of the room. We put it into the dining area of the nursing unit. We had one nurse who was very crafty. She made up all these decorations. We had another nurse who made all of these bonbonnières, just so that we could sort of create the sort of wedding atmosphere. We went and got a few things out of the chapel so that we could create the stage or the scene, so to speak. And we were able to get a chaplain to come, and we invited their family, and they were able to actually get married in the hospital on the medical unit. She did pass away 2 days later, but the family were so grateful, and that is a moment that I would never forget. That was where I saw all of the staff come together, and it was just amazing. They got her all dressed up. They did her hair. They did her makeup. She couldn't even sit up in the bed. She had to lay down the entire time. So that's a real memorable moment for me.
And I think these experiences talk about kind of nursing not as what we traditionally think of as nursing roles, right? Like I never imagined I'd be coordinating a horse coming to the hospital or you helping to organize a wedding, right? Like I think it really speaks to the breadth of what nursing really is and what it involves.
Right. And I think also being, patient and person and family centered. That's really what that is, I think.
No, I'm good. These stories are amazing, though. They remind me when we sit down around nights for the students, what you will learn on night shift surpasses everything you will learn on day shift. So
I agree with that, because I work predominantly nights.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Night shift, you learn everything you need to learn about nursing, and that's when those stories come out. When my preceptor I'm talking like she's dead, she's not. But my preceptor that I had has 30 years of experience, and the stories she would come out with on nights when we had time to talk are these kind of stories that are amazing. And it's not stuff you can talk about on days because there isn't time, but what you learn on nights about the role of nursing, professional dynamics, just what it really is to be a nurse is just amazing. So if I can give you one piece of advice about nights, because nights as a student can be stressful because you're tired, you have a homework, but to really listen and ask questions, like these kinds of questions to your senior nurses about what's your most memorable moment, what advice do you have for me? There are stories and things that you'll take with you forever, and it's what I learned the most when I was at clinical was on night shift.
So now let's shift the conversation a little bit to explore challenges that you've encountered in your nursing career thus far, and maybe kind of expand upon that in terms of how you faced those challenges and advice that you have for our colleagues in the audience. Did you want to start now?
Okay, I can start. Thank you, Tim, for the question. That sounds like an interview question, but
Please provide me
It
with
does.
detailed strategies that you use to overcome that challenge.
well, thank you, Tim. I will give you some eye contact, but not too much, so I don't scare you. I think my biggest challenge right now is to navigate the transition from a student to a new grad. And I'll give 2 examples of that. Now it really sounds like an interview question, sorry. I think when you're like a 4th-year student, it's like going from high school to university. When you're in grade 12, you're like king of the world in your high school. Everyone's like, yeah, you're awesome. You're on your prom committee, you're in high school. Everyone's like, wow, look at that grade 12, you're awesome. That's like 4th year of nursing school when you're finishing consolidation. Your preceptor's like, you're awesome. The team's like, you're awesome. You're like, yes. And then you get to your first nursing job. You finish your NCLEX, you're like, okay, cool. And then you get to your first nursing job. You're still your new grad initiative, or you're not. If you're lucky, you get your new grad initiative. But you're still like licensed, and you have your mentor. And then it's like university. Your prof doesn't know your name. No one knows your name. Your manager's like, who are you? I hired like 7 of you. Yeah. But not in a mean way, but it's like when you get into your first bio class. Like my first degree was in biomedical science. My prof had like 800 of us. We were like, who, what? Okay. So you need to get used to still making your mark and giving good patient care, but without that like continual praise you always get as a student. And that was the biggest part for me, was still, how do I still make my mark and show leadership and still do my job, but as a novice nurse? How do I transition the role where I'm responsible for that patient care because I have a license and I need to, like, it's on my license, it's not my preceptor's license, it's my license now. And how do I do that and do it well, because it's very scary, but still be a leader, still try to bring new ideas when the staff doesn't really know who I am, my manager doesn't know who I am, and they're busy, they have lives too, so I need to do that. And without having that support of your faculty. Because when you were at school, if something didn't go well in clinical or something, you always had your professor to go back on. And hospitals do have supports. I'm not saying they don't. I work at the Ottawa Hospital, they have great supports, but it's not the same. And that was hard. And the second thing I found that was hard with that transition as well was when you're a student, when you're in the student role, people are a lot more nurturing in the sense of like, you can still be cute and you're professional, but it's a different kind of professional than when you get into the workforce as a registered nurse. They expect you to be professional as students, but if you have a slip up or as like you're talking about a cute doctor or something, they're like, oh, that's cute. You're like a student, but like when you get into the role as a professional nurse, it becomes a different role. And I personally, because I'm very social and I like to talk, it was something that I had to talk to myself every morning about, like, okay, so you're in the workplace now, you need to be social and be friendly, but not everyone's your friend. You just need to like kind of clamp it down. So that was like my challenges. They're like my real weaknesses, which that maybe I wouldn't say at a work interview, but something that I had to work on, that real big transition between a student and a registered nurse, is that you really need to address what your weaknesses were at students and really try to change those and improve them so you're successful as a nurse.
I think I'm just thinking about kind of what you've said and reflecting on that and thinking about my nursing career and some of the challenges I think that I faced was kind of going from that period of like, okay, I've got my nursing skills down and I feel like pretty comfortable in that. But now there are things that I want to advocate for the patients I'm working with, for us as a staff, and how do I go about doing that? And I think I was, as a newer nurse, very passionate, as I continue to be, but passionate in a way I think sometimes that the things that I was talking about or asking for or wanting to talk about was coming across in a way that wasn't being heard. And so I think it was where I was like, well, I think we need to do this and we need to do that. And that when I would approach, whether it was managers or our clinical leaders at that time, about kind of doing that, they would kind of take a step back. And I think for me, it was figuring out how do I still get my message across, but in a way that it's going to be received better. And I think that took me time to learn. And that was kind of the challenge was, I've been, as I said, a part of RNAO as a student. And so you get really passionate and you're like, I know things can be better and I want to help make that happen. And so you're trying to advocate, but figuring out how to do that and do it in a way that's going to help kind of the higher ups see it as well and kind of go along with it is a part of what was challenging for me, I think, as a nurse. And a part of that was kind of personality and kind of figuring out how do I continue to move things forward that I think are really important and do it in a way that is going to really lead to change. So I think that was a bit of a challenge for me. And I think that happens when you're in big organizations as well, right? And you want to make changes that are going to have impacts on lots of different levels that you have to really start to understand how does it all fit together. And for me, it took time to work through that and start to understand that I needed to be able to address all of those different things while still trying to make the changes I was trying to make.
I think that's a really, really good example. But knowing you, Gurjit, I believe that your passion is your driver and your navigator, actually. And I don't think you'll ever lose that. For me, I think that one thing that comes to mind in terms of a challenge was a decision point. And I think that many of us throughout your career or throughout your life, you're going to sort of come to many decision points where you are sometimes conflicted or feel challenged internally. And for me, I will never forget, it was very, very early in my career. I felt as though I was still a new grad. I felt as though I was a new nurse. And I can completely relate to Nathalie's story where I felt like I remember going from awesome as a student to, okay, you'll eventually get it, But my decision point that I was challenged with was when I was tapped on the shoulder by the chief nurse at the time at the hospital. It wasn't even a year yet that I was a nurse, and she gave me the opportunity to manage the same unit that I was the nurse on. And I thought, why me? There are so many other senior nurses. There were some late career nurses there, Heather. So many senior nurses around, and why me? And I remember the challenge that I felt was, okay, so I'm a registered nurse in the union. And I felt that, okay, so then I started asking all of these questions, and I was more focused on the fact that I was going to be going from, coming out of the union, and what was going to happen to the few seniority hours I had as a new grad, actually. I didn't even realize, but, and that was a very difficult decision for me. I was also conflicted around that decision because I really loved the bedside nursing. I was very passionate, just like Gurjit, about the work that I was doing. I was proud to be a frontline nurse. I was really proud in that. And I felt as though I didn't have much time to gain, more experience in that. On the flip side of things, I remember when I went into nursing, I went in there with the intention of being a nurse leader. I will raise my hand to say that was always my plan. I knew that I wanted to have the opportunity to manage and lead nurses and nursing, but I wasn't ready, so I thought. So I really found that was a very difficult decision. And I think what I did was I sought mentors to help me with that decision point. I spoke to some other nurses who sort of went through that same experience, moving from the front line into management. And I also sort of got to that place where I didn't allow my fear to get in the way of the opportunity. I just had to find time with myself and kind of work my way through it. And obviously, 20-something years later, I most definitely don't regret that challenge. That challenge turned into an opportunity.
Well, this is great. I'm just taking all of this in, and when I was thinking about it, responding to this question, I'm like, do you guys have 2 or 3 hours? Because if we're talking about challenges, I can go through a lot. But let me maybe sum it up by sharing some, I think, pearls of wisdom that I've accumulated over the past number of years. And the first is that perfection is an illusion. And someone once said, I think, that you become truly happy when you realize that you can never be 100% perfect. What you can do is do the best that you can do, and acknowledging that everyone is human, that there are going to be some mistakes that are made along the way, there are going to be some pitfalls, some mines that we have to go through. And I think that it's a real strength to be able to see those see them as opportunities to learn from those experiences, the good and the bad. And I think that that not only helps us to mature as nurses, but to mature as people. I've really had to work to develop a tolerance to uncertainty, because I think, again, in life, in our profession, there's nothing that is certain. I can expect to go into work on a day like, well, yesterday, I'm thinking to myself, looking at my schedule, I'm like, oh, this is going to be a nice kind of, not to say that I'm just going to sit around and twiddle my thumbs, but I know exactly what's going to happen today, and it's going to be smooth sailing. Well, no, it wasn't. It was... And being able to be resilient and to embrace that, even though as you're going through it, you're thinking to myself, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into today? But then, often at the end, you start to get a little bit of clarity and to learn from that experience. And I think that's really important. And then the last, maybe more professional specific point that I want to raise is that I don't think that there's one particular career path that nurses must follow. And I just reflecting upon what people have told me in the past, well, if you want to go into whatever role, you need to start in the hospital, and you need to get at least 2 to 3 years of experience. And I'm not in any way, shape, or form trying to downgrade the importance of clinical practice. Hospital's a great setting to work at, but there's no one, I think, career path that one necessarily needs to follow. You need to do what you need to do to mature as a professional, to align with your interests, to do something that you really enjoy. And so I've had a very atypical career path to date, and I'm sure that some people would look at that and be like, really? Like, what does this guy even, does he know what he's talking about? But I think that the experiences that I have had have been very enriching, have helped me to grow knowledge and skill tremendously. I have never worked in a hospital. I have no desire to work in a hospital. I have been quite privileged to work in public health, and really, really admire and align with the public health and community health nursing in general, that philosophy of care and approach. And so I think, I guess maybe challenge the status quo, and only you yourself know what your career path ought to be. And sometimes you have no idea what is going to be around that bend. And when opportunities come available, you have to seize the day.
I think that's a really good point you raise about kind of the uncertainty, because I think even as you're talking about the career path you choose, there's always uncertainty in that. And I remember when I was finishing nursing school, I had enjoyed so many different things that I was like, I don't really know what I want to do. Like, I don't know where I want to work, and how do I go about making that decision? And I think a part of kind of through our careers is that you look for mentorship, and you look for people that can mentor you to kind of help you to get to where you want to go. And you had mentioned that as well, Sheryl, in terms of kind of seeking out mentors to talk through decisions and that type of thing. And I wonder if you can kind of speak to kind of experiences as a mentor, even for other people.
Absolutely. I mean, I identified one of my greatest challenges, or many of my greatest challenges, as decision points throughout my career. And one of the examples I gave you that assisted me with those decisions is mentorship. So I have always had the privilege of having the most amazing mentors. And really and truly, sometimes you do get to the point, a really good mentor sometimes does themselves out of that work or that job, Because really, I had one mentor for 4 years, and I remember when I got to a point where I thought, okay, I'm good. The 4 years that you served me was awesome, but I'm good now, and I think I need to, go on to someone else. And that individual that I'm talking about was the provincial chief nurse at that time. I was very early in my career, and I felt to myself that, chief nursing is something that I think that I would like to aspire to do somewhere down the way. I mean, I was very, very early in my career, like I said. And I picked up the phone. I was actually at a nursing leader network, one of the RNAO network members, network events. And I saw, at the time, her name was Sue Matthews. And I just went right up to her and had the conversation. And I said, I'm Sheryl Bernard, I'm a new nurse, and one day I would like to be just like you when I grow up. No, I said I would love to work in the career, and I said, would you mentor me? And she just, without hesitation, she said yes. And I said to her, I would love to have formal and maybe informal, and we talked about, and we set times up. I made my way down to her office right down Bay Street, and that was 4 years of building blocks to where I am today. And then I sort of went on to another mentor that I got, different experiences and values from. And I felt it was I got so much from that, I felt that I needed to give back. So one mentee that I can think of in particular was a student of mine about 4 years ago from UOIT. I was her faculty advisor. And then after being her faculty advisor, I was her mentor. And then after that, I was, the person who proofed her paper before she did her first publication. So what we did was a lot of career and goal setting. And then after that, I was at her wedding. And we continued, and I was with her as she was doing her searching for her job and trying to figure out what it is that she wanted to do. She was passionate about policy, and she currently works at RNAO today. And that was one of her first work experience after graduating from school. So there's a lot of great that can come out of being both a mentor and a mentee.
Well, that's very great advice, Sheryl. I think that nursing is a relationship-based profession, whether we're talking about therapeutic relationships with patients and clients, or even collegial relationships amongst our peers. And I think that that is so important and so enriching to our professional development. I've had the great privilege of having a number of formal mentors along the road, and their wisdom and their support has been so invaluable to support me, and I like to think that I've also helped to support some others along the way in their growth and development. And I think, Sheryl, you touched upon there's formal and informal, and while many of us are very privileged to have that formal mentor relationship, there are also many opportunities for the informal mentorship, and I have learned a lot from, well, just to give you examples, Nathalie, as president of the NSO, and her enthusiasm has been so inspiring, and having worked with her during her term, I thought that was an amazing experience for me. So the mentorship goes two ways. It's not just, I am the experienced nurse and I'm going to provide you with guidance. It's also those who may be earlier on in their careers helping to support and inspire us. And I just got to put a plug in for RNAO because someone...
I put a few in there, come on.
I actually first met Sheryl when I was a nursing student. You were on the board. I think that was in 2007, 2008, if I'm correct. Yep.
You did your homework.
I remember, but you remember these things. You remember people who really stand out, Sheryl, and certainly you were one of those people. But RNAO, someone said to me after the most recent AGM that when you're in an RNAO, whether it be an executive or a meeting, it's a very supportive environment, and I think that support really does come through. And so I encourage everyone to take advantage of the networks that do exist within RNAO, and not being afraid to, as Sheryl has done, and myself too, mustering up that courage to go and to ask, what, can you work with me, or what would that look like? And I know it can seem intimidating because I felt it, but it's people 9.9 times out of 10 will respond so generously to that request.
And it's such an interesting point that you make, because I actually have not had any formal mentors. And it's only just this past year, actually, that I've started to seek out having more formal mentorship relationships. And I think that's because of all of the informal mentors that I had. And I think a lot of that has come through kind of being a part of RNAO and having been on the executive. And you kind of have conversations about nursing as a profession and kind of some of the bigger things than just kind of the day-to-day stuff that you can get caught up in. And so I think I didn't feel like I needed kind of that formal mentorship, but I felt like I could there were people that I worked with that were within the organization and then within RNAO that I knew that I could really kind of talk about kind of the challenges I was having and work through kind of the things that I was thinking about and how I was trying to make decisions, that I didn't have a formal mentorship. So as I hear you talking about reaching out to Sue, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine having done that ever. But now it's kind of where I'm at a point where now I feel like I need a bit more of that formal mentorship, and that I need to have the opportunity to I think, talk in more depth about kind of where it is I want to go, where do I see things, and to work through that with somebody who can provide me more of that guidance. But I think the informal mentors that I've had have really helped me to make decisions along the way and just provided insight and support, which has been so meaningful. And on the same side, I haven't been a formal mentor to other nurses, but I hear a lot of it more informally. And I think that whether that's through clinical practice, whether that's through educational types of things where nurses will approach me about talking through decisions that they're making or wanting to talk about what comes next within their career or how they're trying to make changes. And so it's been an informal process for me, both on the mentor and the mentee side. And so, but I think it's always helped me to grow. And as you said, Tim, we learn so much from students and from nurses that are earlier in their career with respect to kind of what nursing is all about, because you do start to kind of forget what it was like 15 years ago when I first started. And so to kind of re-engage with that really makes a big difference, I think, in me continuing on in nursing as well.
Yeah, I thank you for all your comments. I feel like being the newest person on the block here, I'm like, oh, mentorship. Because I don't know if most of the students here can respond to the same thing. You hear a lot of it in nursing school. And first I need to say thank you, Tim. You're going to make me blush with your compliments. I met Tim last year, and I thought he was awesome. I'm like, oh, Tim, I want to be like you. I was like, you had the coolest job. And this is just an anecdote. It's a funny one, though, because I'm pretty bold sometimes. And I'm like, Tim, you have a master's in law from Osgood, but you don't have a law degree. So how did that work? And everyone's just got hushed, like, can't believe she just asked that. And he's like, he took it really well. He's like, well, yeah, it's kind of like not the most, it's an atypical path, but this is how I did it, and got like without missing a beat. And everyone's like, I can't believe she just asked that. But that's how we started our conversation and our professional relationship. But that's how sometimes professional relationships start. But Tim is definitely someone that I aspire to be, because he's so passionate and he's so narrows into what he wants to do when it comes to nursing policy, and just keeps going until he gets the result he wants. So thank you for that. And this is the first time I meet the two of you, but it's great to be on a panel with so many nursing mentors that really push forward in nursing. So I really like that. And thank you so much for doing this, because for the new grads and the new students, it's really inspiring to have people who really lead the way. Because sometimes when you're in clinical practice and you get bogged down with the day-to-day, sometimes it's nice to have people to look up to and to move forward to progress change. And I know you all know the word transformative leadership. Well, this is transformative leadership in action, so thank you.
Isn't she an awesome student? She's awesome. You're awesome, Nathalie.
But what I wanted to talk about for mentorship, because the first time I heard mentorship, I wasn't exactly sure what it meant. I always thought it was more like my teachers or maybe my preceptor, but I didn't really knew that it would expand outward from that. I thought maybe it was my manager, my clinical nurse educator on the floor. And when I came to the RNAO, it showed me that it could be so much more. It was a nurse that I developed a professional relationship with that helped me develop my professional capabilities to get where I wanted to be. So either in a professional setting, like if you want to be a wound care specialist, you would talk to a mentor for wound care specialists. But even in a larger scope for nurse policy or nurse leadership, seeking out someone who are already in those leadership positions or in those positions that will help you develop not just the psychomotor skills, but more of the larger, softer skills you need to get there. But another story I wanted to share, because the question also said about mentees, something I discovered during consolidation in the new grad is how quickly that role changes. So you're fourth year or you're new grad and you have students coming up to you asking you questions and you're like, okay, cool. And you give them an answer and they look at you and they're like, oh, okay. Oh, I'm really listening to you. And then the first time, and then you realize, oh, okay, so I really need to take this seriously because they're taking what I'm saying very seriously because I'm less scary than asking the 30-year-old nurse, I guess, or the nurse that looks more scary because I guess I look as scared as they are. I remember the first question, it was about metformin. I'll never forget it because I gave an answer and they're like, oh, thank you. And they kept coming to me all day and I'm like, oh, it really affected me because I now realized that I needed to take the role seriously because they saw me as someone they could get answers to, and that I realized, well, now everything needs to change. My demeanor needs to change because if now they hear me talk against someone or diminish the system or something like that, it's not just about giving the right answer anymore, it's about just modeling my professionalism to them. So it changes super quickly, so just watch out for that, everyone. But talking about the RNAO and everything, and what you guys are all doing today is networking. So what I discovered coming to my first RNAO AGM was how powerful networking is. It's really the first step into creating those mentorship bonds, also creating good steps to getting your first career or getting interested in new types of nursing or extending your education. So I wanted to ask Sheryl, how did you find networking helped you in your nursing career?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And I do apologize. I think I referred to you as a nursing student as opposed to a new grad, right? It's probably your story was so profound, you know? For me, I think one of the examples I gave earlier was networking at NLN, and that was where I met my mentor, but also that was where I was really introduced to RNAO. And RNAO was also a pivotal opportunity for me throughout my career. It provides you with many opportunities to network with various individuals at various stages in their career at a very professional level. I learned so much actually through all of the various tables that I sat at. Tim mentioned that I was on the board of RNAO, and that also came from one of my mentors nudging me to do that. So really just the opportunity, even during my campaign, all of the lessons learned and all of the advice that I received was through various networking opportunities that I actually went for.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think we've all been part of RNAO in one way or another, kind of, and so that really has provided a lot of opportunities for networking, and as we've kind of moved through our careers. And I think the pivotal thing for me really around networking was just around kind of as a nurse, and at SickKids we have an RN council where there's a representative from each unit, and so I knew I wanted to be a part of that, and had done that for a while and been able to organize an MPP visit to the hospital as well. And I remember at that time people thinking like, who is this person that has an MPP coming to the hospital? Like I was a staff nurse who just kind of, again, my work through RNAO was like, oh, I can reach out and kind of organize a visit. And I had done that and hadn't appreciated how to go about doing the same type of networking at the hospital and making sure that everybody at the hospital that needed to know knew what was going on as well. But I think people then at the hospital also knew that I was connected to an RNAO and had a real interest in some of the professional issues and that type of thing. And when there was an opportunity to look at the implementation of best practice guidelines at the hospital, they had kind of applied for the best practice spotlight organization designation. And when they were looking for who would be the right person to potentially lead this initiative for us, that I was approached for that opportunity. And I was so thrilled and amazed because really what I knew is pediatric oncology, and the best practice guidelines that we were talking about implementing really had nothing to do with pediatric oncology. But it was kind of just having been able to network and people having a sense of my interest in issues outside of my daily practice as well, that really enabled that opportunity to come forward to me, because I wouldn't have thought of applying for that type of a position, because it wouldn't have occurred to me that that might be something that I would really be qualified to do. But it was really amazing, and I got to spend the next 3 years working on the implementation of guidelines across the organization. It gave me a chance to then meet people outside of who I really knew from my clinical work, and was so amazing. So I think we don't always know how networking is going to turn out, and how people are going to be connected to different networks that you're potentially going to want to reach out to and have a part of your career.
I think it's really important to build and to maintain a network. When I hear the word networking, I think the first thing that comes to mind is like you're at a conference and there's like a networking session, and and those are valuable opportunities because you can make connections and meet people, but networking I think is much more than that. And sometimes networking relationships need to more organically develop and evolve, and other times it might be taking that initiative and sometimes courage to go up and to introduce yourself. I've had so many interesting experiences, whether it be at airports or on trains, when you see someone that you're like, oh, I recognize that person. I've seen them in the RNAO magazine, or I've seen them on the news, and I'm like, I'm just going to go up and be like, hi, how are you? And I think those are really great opportunities, and to take them out. Another, I think, emerging area is social media. And so you've likely noticed I passed off my BlackBerry to my colleague for a picture, because actually it was our RNAO CEO who's got me on the Twitter train. And it's a great opportunity. I'm new. I'm like two weeks on the Twitter diet, and I'm gaining slowly. But it's a great opportunity to share the work that we're doing at RNAO and for us to connect with members. And I think it's fabulous. Also, keeping in mind, I guess, so social media is a great opportunity. Social media can also be a bit of a minefield you might have to navigate. So keeping in mind that what you post on social media, and if it's a public audience, it is a public audience. And so if you're looking at potential career opportunities or other opportunities, your social media profile very well could pop up at some point, and you certainly don't want that to damage your chances at that opportunity. And then I think networking is not always something that you do just to try to move your development or career forward. I think it's an opportunity to be able to offer that mentorship, to be able to in terms of my own involvement on Twitter, it's trying to maintain a network of our RNAO members so that I can share and disseminate policy work that we're doing, and I can learn from them and hear what are some of the burning policy issues that they're seeing, whether it be in the workplace or at a larger systems level. And so that is it's enriching to the work that I do. It's not necessarily in terms of my own, well, it does help me grow as a professional, but I'm not doing it because I want to move on to the next phase of my career or anything like that. It's really just to enrich the role that I have right now.
Well, those are all very inspiring stories about networking. I want to plug, we did a webinar about social media. I was participating. Delore, our director at the RNAO of HR, set it up for the students at Ryerson about social media and how to use it effectively, how to create your personal branding. So we had, myself was included, and a professional from Ryerson University, and it was about maintaining your social media presence in a professional way on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on various other social media platforms, and how to do that. They can be very powerful tools, like Tim has said, but you also need to use them carefully, just so everyone is aware. So just a little plug on that, but it's very powerful, and it's something that once you feel comfortable using, you can link on to your resumes and your cover letters to see, I've reached out and I've written something purposeful, especially on Twitter, about these policies, or I've tweeted something purposeful to the health minister about the RNAO policies, about RN replacement, another plug about the report, but it's something that can be useful for the job search as well. It just needs to be used very carefully. If you're following the news cycle, some politicians don't use it carefully, so don't be like that. But to use it, and the LinkedIn is very good to just hone your own resume building. For networking, for me, Tim and everyone else had some very good points about networking. For me, it helped me also get over my fear of speaking to individuals that I admired and were in higher levels of authority for me. From the AGM to Queen's Park Day, just speaking to our CEO or speaking to the Minister of Health can be quite intimidating. So once you start doing that, or speaking to nurse leaders that you've always been very admired to, or speaking to nurse leaders and nurses who have been nursing for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, and they tell you their stories, and you're like, oh my goodness, how can I talk to them? I've done nothing. I'm a second year, third year student. It helps you get over those fears, so when you go into the workplace or you're going into an interview, you feel more confident in your accomplishments and your speaking abilities. For me, it really helped me when my current job at the Ottawa Hospital, I emailed the manager to get an interview. 2 years ago, I would have never done that. I'd be like, oh, what happens if I email her and she thinks I'm dumb or something? Now I'm like, okay, I can email her, she's gonna say no. If she says no, okay, move on. Like, I'll word something professional, and the worst thing she can say is no. If I hadn't had that experience networking and speaking to individuals professional way, I've gotten used to that and probably wouldn't have had that opportunity to have that interview. So that's really important. And like Tim said, networking is a really good opportunity to just bridge new ideas, to see nursing in a different view from different viewpoints. It's not always about getting a contact name or a number for a job, but seeing nursing in a different way to see, well, I didn't think of med-surg in this way, or I didn't think of OBS, or I didn't think of this issue that way. So it's just a way to expand just nursing in general and just to build your professional contact. So
If I could just reflect on that, I think, Nathalie, you've brought up a really excellent point around confidence and building confidence. I think it's something that takes a while, and kudos to you for just going in there and confronting the nerves and the fears. I think that sometimes there's a misperception in society that strength means that you are 100% fully confident, you have no fear, you're just going in there, when in reality I think strength is being able to manage those fears, manage the discomfort that you have. I had similar experiences early in my career where I felt there's almost that sense of intimidation, and it's not because of what the other person has done or how they presented itself. I think it's more of a perception that I had. but really taking steps to overcome that and to build confidence, I think, is really important.
Well, what a great discussion and dialogue. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did, and I'd like to thank our 4 colleagues that have spent the last hour with us sharing their experiences and their reflections, and I hope you've gained some insight into some opportunities. So please help me thank them.